Somebody submitted a spooky story saying that they babysat for a wealthy family, but they didn't know that they worshipped the devil. I am back with another spooky story. We're gonna call the person who submitted the story Emily. Emily says that she still doesn't really know how to explain what happened. She's not saying that every rich family is hiding dark secrets, but she's just telling us what happened to her. So back in 2021, Emily was 24 and she was desperate for money. She had just graduated college, her rent had gone up, and her car needed expensive repairs. She ended up finding a babysitting job through a private agency that specialized in wealthy clients. She said that pay was unbelievable. It was $75 an hour, a guaranteed 30 hours a week. She would also get cash bonuses, paid holidays, and they even offered to cover her gas. She said she showed up to the house and the house looked like it was something out of a movie. They had checkered floors, giant chandelier, artwork worth more than her apartment, and they had security cameras everywhere. So she met the parents, and the parents were very polite. We're gonna call the parents Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood. Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, they seemed very friendly, but there was something about their energy that Emily quite couldn't put her finger on. So they had one daughter. We're gonna call her Lily. Lily was 6. And Lily was a little bit creepy. You know, kids be weird. But she said on the first day, Lily whispered to her, "Please don't go downstairs after dark." Emily laughs and asks Lily why. And Lily tells her they get mad when people watch. Before she can ask what she meant, Mrs. Blackwood suddenly appeared behind them. She didn't even hear her walking behind them. It's like she just appeared. She smiles and says, "Lily has such an imagination." That became the family's favorite phrase. Anytime anything weird happened, Lily has an imagination. So the first month wasn't too bad, but there were little things. The clocks in the house, for some reason, never matched. The family had no mirrors in the dining room, and every Friday night she had to leave before 9 p.m. No exception. One afternoon though, Emily was helping Lily with homework, and Lily asked her a question that made her really uncomfortable. Lily asked her, "Do you think people stop screaming after they get used to the fire?" Emily's like, "What?" She just kept coloring and said, "Daddy says some people scream longer than others." Emily was so weirded out, she reports that to her parents. And once again, they laugh and say, "Lily has an imagination," and she's been into scary movies. And mind you, they didn't even have a TV in that house. Now, the second month is when things got strange. Lily would draw pictures of animals, the family, but they were very questionable pictures. The pictures were like bloody. It looked like she drew a massacre with her family and random animals. So one day she accidentally opens the wrong door looking for the laundry room. Instead, she found a staircase leading underground. Now, it didn't feel like your typical basement. There were dozens of black candles lining the steps, and Emily only made it halfway down the steps before she heard somebody behind her. She turns around, it's Miss Blackwood. This time, she wasn't smiling. Miss Blackwood tells her this area isn't for staff. And after that, weird things started happening to Emily. She would wake up in the middle of the night and hear random knocking in her apartment. Maintenance checked out her apartment, they found nothing. Emily would have these weird dreams that she's being surrounded by these weird people wearing these black robes. It's like she's being initiated into something, but she can't see anybody's face. This story is too long. Like for part 2, I'm literally filming it right now. So Emily is having these weird dreams that she's being initiated into something, and her apartment itself kind of turned into a nightmare. Her dog would growl at empty corners in her apartment. If it wasn't the knocks, then it was footsteps or just random things just knocking over in her apartment. One day she woke up, went to the kitchen, and noticed that all her cups were on the floor. That day, she said that she was going to quit. So she gets over there and she tries to quit. People told her that they need her, they reassured her, and then doubled her pay. So she stayed. Again, the nightmares hadn't stopped. She would wake up exhausted, like she hadn't slept. But again, she's gaslighting herself because maybe it has nothing to do with the family. At the time, Emily would record TikToks and post them while she was in the house. One day, somebody DM'd her. Person told her that she used to work in that house. She quit after 6 months because so many weird things were going on around her. She was hearing children laughing inside of her apartment. She said a priest had to bless her 3 separate times. After she sent those messages, the girl blocked her. Emily says she really should have quit then. She stayed because the money was changing her life. Paid off debt, bought a better car, and started saving, so she really convinced herself that she was being dramatic. Then came Halloween. Family insisted that she stays later because they were hosting a private gathering. Around 10 p.m., Lily fell asleep upstairs. Emily went looking for Mrs. Blackwood to let her know. That's when she heard chanting. Sounds like it's coming from downstairs. Emily said, Knows curiosity kills people in horror movies, but she really couldn't help herself. The basement door was a little open. She started walking down slowly to see what's going on. At least what looked like 20 people downstairs. The Blackwoods were down there and it looked like they were like orchestrating a ceremony. Everyone was talking in unison. And the worst part, y'all, there was a pig in the center. As they're chanting and talking in unison, Lily walks downstairs and she looks like she's in a trance. Still wearing her little princess pajamas, nobody's forcing her. She walked to the center like she's done this before. Then the parents, the pig, they start smearing the all over themselves. Out of nowhere, everyone looks and they see Emily is standing right there on the staircase. And Mrs. Blackwood tells her, "You weren't supposed to see this yet." Emily said she ran so fast, got back in her car and drove straight to one of her friend's houses. Didn't feel safe going home by herself. Next morning, it's broad daylight, she drove home. There was an envelope outside of her apartment. There was no address on it, no stamp, no nothing. She opens it, inside was her paycheck and a note. Paycheck was triple the usual amount. And all the note said was, "Lily will miss you." Emily never told them she quit, changed her number, and blocked every contact. 2 months later, she moved out of that apartment. She says she feels like weird things were still going on. She winded up getting a priest to come to her new apartment, do a prayer in the apartment to cleanse it, also prayers to cleanse her. She says she moved on from the situation, but that was the wildest thing ever. Haven't stalked her, they just let her go. Sometimes she thinks about going back because was it really that bad? The one thing that she really couldn't get with, seeing what they did to the pig. Anyway, that was the end of that story. Got in with 24 hours for part 2. That's at the end of all my videos. I love you, my abducted human. I'm your favorite Haitian homegirl.
If you ever explore an abandoned property, please be very, very, very careful on what you see. I saw something I shouldn't have when I was exploring an abandoned house, and now it has permanently changed my life. Listen to my story and never do what I did. So about 1 to 2 miles away from my house, there's this really, really old abandoned house. No one has lived here for hundreds of years. It's super old, broken down, the walls are falling apart, this place is in really bad condition. I thought it would be a cool idea to go walk to this house, look around, explore, see what I could find. So I put on my boots and I walk through the forest. It's like I said, it's about 1 mile or 2 away from my house, straight shot through the forest. As I'm walking through the forest to get to this house, it was very cool. I mean, you could hear all the animals throughout the forest. You hear crickets and bugs, and you hear just random animals making all their noises. It's a really cool experience, I'm not gonna lie. But as soon as I approached the house, it all went dead silent. It was really strange that there were no animals, no bugs, dead silent as soon as I approached the house. This should have been my first sign to leave this place alone, but I didn't. I walked into the house and I had my flashlight with me and I started looking around the place for anything cool. I was thinking maybe I could find something valuable and go sell it at a thrift store or something. And I saw the strangest thing at this house. There was just this regular book. There was no title, no words on it, nothing. It was just a plain book laying on the ground and there's nothing around it, just a book. I go up and I'm like, oh, let me check out this book. Maybe it's an old Bible, maybe an old journal for like some old person. I mean, this is cool. Big mistake. Leave things alone at abandoned houses, especially old abandoned houses. So I go ahead, I grab the book and I go to read it, and there must have been a leaf or something in one of the pages, so it opens straight up to like the middle of the book. And I see it opens up to this page where it's this weird, creepy image of a wooden man in like a river or something. I'll put up the picture for you to see. As soon as I saw this image, it sent shivers down my spine. I don't know why. There was something about this page's image that was really unsettling to me. I closed the book back down. I put it back on the ground. Like I said, I can't even explain to you why, but it freaked me out. I had weird feeling about that picture. As soon as I had put this book down, I got like really sick to my stomach. I don't know why. I started throwing up and stuff. It was really bad. It was at this point I decided that I need to go back home. I need to go, I needed to get off my feet and relax for a little while because I'm feeling really sick. So I started making my way back to my house. I lay down in my bed. I try to, to relax a little bit, to calm down. And by this point, the sun had gone down and it's nighttime. I'm getting ready to head to sleep because, obviously I'm not feeling well. I just walked 4 miles. I'm pretty tired. I'm ready to get some shut-eye. This whole time that I'm laying in my bed, getting ready to doze off, I had a strange feeling that somebody was watching me. I could not tell you what it felt like. It just was a weird feeling that someone was watching me. It got to the point I was trying to ignore it this whole time. I'm like, I'm freaking myself out. what's going on? But eventually it got to the point where I couldn't handle it anymore. And then I'm looking around my room. And as I'm looking around my room, I see something in my window. I cannot make this up. In my window, standing, looking directly at me, was the wooden man from the book. But it looked very, very different. It stood there. It had a distorted face. It was smiling. It had like human-looking eyes. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life. It didn't move. It didn't speak. It didn't make a noise. It was just sitting there in the window, staring at me. As I sat there, like, staring at this thing, I'm terrified. It goes away after like 10 seconds. It just disappears. And after this, I did not see or hear anything for like weeks. I mean, my life went back to complete normal until I was at school, and then I started having the same feeling. Somebody was watching me. Lo and behold, I look out the window. There it is again, the wooden man. Now, this has happened to me multiple times since the first time it has happened. Every few weeks, I see the wooden man, and it is honestly the most horrifying thing. I wanted to make this video so I could warn people to please stay away from abandoned houses. Please, because this could change your life. I haven't seen the wooden man for over a week. I'm really hoping I'll never see it again. I don't know what to do about this. I don't know if it's my mind playing tricks on me. I don't know if I need to go see a therapist. I don't know what to do. If anyone has suggestions, please let me know what to do.
The elevator from across my hotel desk would open every single night with the lights completely off, but the security cameras would never show it opening. This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about the whispering that I would hear from the elevators at night from the haunted hotel that I worked at. I started working the front desk shortly after college. The hotel was old but expensive enough that management called it historic instead of outdated. Everyone who worked there had a ghost story. A housekeeper claimed someone followed her through the empty rooms on the 5th floor, and one of the bartenders refused to enter the basement alone. Guests occasionally complained about footsteps or doors opening during the night, and I never took any of it seriously. Old buildings make noise, and people tend to find ghosts when they're already expecting them. My shift started at 11 at night and ended at 7 in the morning. Most nights were quiet. I checked in late arrivals and answered the phone and watched the lobby until the morning staff came in. The front desk directly faced 2 elevators. From where I stood, I could see both doors without moving, and the first time it happened, it was a little after 2 in the morning. I was looking down at the computer when I heard the right elevator ding, and the doors slid open. The lights inside were completely off. I could see the metal frame and the edge of the floor, but nothing beyond that. The elevator looked much deeper than it should have. I assumed the light had burned out, and I waited for someone to step into the lobby, but nobody did. The doors stayed open, but after maybe 30 seconds, I called out, "Hello?" And that was when I heard the whispering. There were several voices inside the elevator, and they were speaking quickly, all at the same time. I couldn't understand any of the words. It sounded like a crowded room where everyone was trying to speak quietly over one another. I stepped away from the desk, and the lobby suddenly felt freezing. It wasn't gradual. It was literally 1 second I was comfortable, and the next my hands were shaking and I could see goosebumps rising along my arms. And then I felt something worse. A crushing sadness came over me. It felt like I had just received the worst news of my life. I remember gripping the edge of the desk because I thought I might start crying. The voices continued whispering, and the elevator doors remained open for almost 3 whole minutes. And then they slammed shut. The cold disappeared immediately, and so did the sadness, and the lobby felt normal again, and for a while I stood there staring at the doors. And then I went into the security room and pulled up the lobby footage. I expected to see the elevator opening, but instead, the video showed me standing behind the desk and staring at closed elevator doors. For almost 3 minutes, the elevator never opened on camera. I watched it several times, and there was no flicker or missing footage. The timestamp continued normally. It was just me staring at an elevator that appeared completely closed. I told the morning manager what happened, and she laughed and said, "So you finally met the elevator people?" I asked what she meant, and she said other night employees had reported hearing voices from the right elevator, but nobody had ever seen anyone inside. She assumed it was part of the hotel ghost stories that people like to tell. Maintenance checked the elevator that afternoon, and the lights worked again. The door logs showed no activity at 2 in the morning, and according to the system, the elevator had stayed parked on the 7th floor all night. I told myself I had been overtired. Maybe the doors never opened. That explanation lasted 4 nights. And then it happened again. The right elevator dinged at 2:07 a.m. The doors opened and the inside was dark. The whispering had already started, but this time it sounded louder. I could still hear several voices speaking over one another, but one seemed closer than the others. I thought it repeated, "Look inside." I stayed behind the desk, but the temperature dropped. That same sadness settled over me again, only heavier than before. It didn't feel like my own emotion. It felt like I had walked into a room where something terrible had just happened and the feeling was still hanging in the air. I kept my eyes on the computer, and the elevator remained open for nearly 5 minutes this time. Then the door snapped shut. When I checked the camera, it showed the same thing as before. Me standing alone. The doors closed the entire time. After that, it began happening every few nights. Always the right elevator, usually sometime after 2 a.m., and the darkness inside never changed. The voices became faster each time. I stopped checking the footage because it always showed the same thing. I also stopped telling my coworkers. They either joked about it or acted like I was making the hotel sound more interesting for guests. I developed a routine. When the elevator opened, I looked down. I waited for the cold and sadness to pass, and then I continued my shift. I never went near it. One night, the doors opened at 2:13 a.m., and the whispering was so loud that I thought I could hear it clearly from behind the desk. Every voice stopped for a second, and then they all said the same word together. My name. I looked up before I could stop myself. Something shifted inside the elevator. At first I thought my eyes were adjusting to the darkness, but then I saw a tall shape standing against the back wall. It was almost as dark as the elevator, but I could make out its outline. Its head was bent slightly to one side, and its arms hung too low. It leaned toward the opening as though it was trying to see me around the frame. Every voice went silent, and the sadness disappeared. What replaced it was pure dread. The shape took one step forward, and I heard the sole of its foot drag across the elevator floor. I backed away from the desk, and the shape moved again. And then the door slammed shut so hard that the lobby walls shook. I ran into the security room and locked the door. The live camera showed the closed elevator. It also showed me backing away from it several seconds earlier. I rewound the footage, and the elevator never opened. The dark shape never appeared. Right before I turned and ran, something moved across the screen. A shadow passed between me and the camera. It came from the direction of the elevator and stopped directly behind me. I didn't finish my shift. I called the morning manager and told her I was leaving. I never worked another night at that hotel, and I still don't know what was inside the elevator. I only know the whispering stopped the moment it realized I could see it. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
This Ouija board story that I'm about to translate for you guys is a little bit crazy. It is coming from a grandmother. She had been recently listening to a scary podcast with her granddaughter, and it triggered a memory in her brain of something that happened to her and her sister when they were younger and decided to play with the Ouija board. Now, if you do speak Spanish and you love listening to scary stories in Spanish like I do, it is coming from El Mausoleo de los Horrores, and it is a compilation video called Experiencias Aterradoras con la Ouija. Now, if you don't speak Spanish, or maybe you don't want to listen to it in Spanish because it is 100 times scarier, don't you worry, because I will be translating the story for you now. So when the grandmother was young, they lived in a town called Mapastepec. I wanted it to stay in my brain and not look down and read it, but that was a hard one. Anyway, she says that back then that town was really small. There wasn't a lot of people there. This happened back in the 60s, and basically if anybody new came to town, everybody would know about it. If something happened, everybody would know about it. Basically everybody knew everybody in that town. She explains how her and her sister used to always hang out with the little boys down the block in their neighborhood, and there was one day where one of her friends, Julio, came to hang out with them, but he brought a really big box, and it was something that they had never seen before. Now, Julio had family in the United States, so he was always coming and going back and forth. So Julio ends up telling them that while he was in the US, one of his uncles had this really strange box, and the uncle actually told him what the use of this box was for. Julio was very curious, so he actually drew all of the symbols and letters that were number on that box. And when he came back to Mexico, he decided that he wanted to make his own Ouija board, essentially. She explains how Julio's grandfather that lives in Mexico was a carpenter, so it was very easy for Julio to have all the tools and everything he needed. So Julio's grandfather did let him use his tools, and Julio even painted this Ouija board black, and that is when he went to meet up with his friend. Julio basically explained the rules to them and told them that with this board they can talk to ghosts, or at least that is what his uncle told him. That same day, Julio asked his friends if they wanted to go to the park and play with the Ouija board, and they said yes. They were actually really excited to do this. I'm not gonna lie, I'd probably be excited too. Like, I come from a very small town, and when I tell you we have played with the Ouija board out of boredom, yeah, I can see that happening, unfortunately. There was one time when me and my friends played with the Ouija board drunk. We were 21. So afternoon came, they all went to the park, and it was 5 of them, including the grandmother who's telling the story and her sister and the other friends. It was already getting dark, and they put this Ouija board on the dirt on the floor, and they all sat around it in a circle. And that's when Julio took out like a little shot glass and explained to them that they were going to use that as a planchette. So they started playing the Ouija board, and she remembers that they asked who was talking to them and that the Ouija board spelled out Maria Elena. Apparently the spirit explained to them that she had passed away in 1958. She remembers how her and her sister were really scared, but they were also really excited about playing with something like this. After some time, it did get really late, and Julio asked any of them if they wanted to take it home, and that maybe they could all take turns taking it to their own houses and playing it in their own homes. The grandmother and her sister were kind of excited, and they were like, yes, we want to take it home. Can we go first? So Maria Elena never actually responded to any other questions, so they all decided to get up. They said goodbye to each other, and they all went to their homes, her and her sister taking the Ouija board with them. She explains how around that time their parents would always make them go to bed early, so as soon as they got home, they had dinner, they took a shower, and they went to their bedrooms to go to sleep. When she goes into her bedroom, she remembers she put the Ouija board in this cardboard box that she had next to her bed. So she lays down, she's going to bed, and as soon as she was about to fall asleep, she hears somebody knocking on her door. Obviously, she asks who it is, she tells them to open the door, and nobody does, but she also thought it was weird because nobody in her house knocked on her door before entering. They would just simply open the door and walk in. Since nobody said anything or walked into her bedroom, she decided to lay back down and go to sleep, and that is when she hears the knocking again, but this time because she was fully awake, she realized that it wasn't somebody knocking on her wooden door because she heard the knockings really close to her bed. Again, this is back in the 60s, and she said that she didn't have a normal night lamp that we do. It was like those petroleum lamps that she lit it up and was looking around her room. I don't know why that scene just reminded me of the movie The Others. Have you guys seen it? So she's looking around her bedroom, and obviously there's no other door there, so nobody could be knocking anywhere else, and that is when she points her lamp towards the Ouija board that is in the box. She explains how it didn't even cross her mind that that knocking could be the Ouija board, but when she has her lamp lighting up the Ouija board in this box, that's when she started to hear the knockings again, and she knows it's coming from the Ouija board because they were knocking so hard that that Ouija board was shaking and making that cardboard box shake with it. This box with the Ouija board moves like 3 inches, and it was 3 knocks coming from that Ouija board. She immediately gets spooked out, so she runs into her sister's room. She tells her what happened, and her sister just tells her to lay in the bed and go to sleep with her. I was about to say my sister would have told me to get my fucking ass back to my room, but no, because I remember when I was scared. My sister's 4 years older than me. I remember I would wake up scared and tell her there's somebody in the closet. My sister, maybe she was scared, who knows, but she would get up, turn the light on, open the closet, and be like, there's nothing in there. This bitch was not scared of anything. Till this day, my sister is, yeah, she's not scared of shit. I wish I had that courage. I'm a Cancer. My sister's a Leo. Imagine having an older sister that's a Leo as a Cancer. That bitch ran a strict program in our house. They really didn't do anything about the knockings and the Ouija board, but the following morning they did meet up with their friend Julio and told them what happened at nighttime. She explains how Julio looked at them and said, oh man, I'm so sorry. I didn't think that they were gonna scare you guys too. Scare you guys too? I would have broken that Ouija board across Julio's face, because what the fuck do you mean scare you guys too? He explained to them that ever since he made that Ouija board and had it in his room because he decided to play with it by himself at home, he wouldn't stop hearing somebody knocking. Interesting, Julio. When Julio started saying this, he got the Ouija board and he was explaining to them that this is what I hear and he was knocking on the Ouija board. The lady telling us the story, the grandmother got goosebumps all over her body because the knockings that Julio was doing was the exact same sounds that she had been hearing in her bedroom. Julio tells them very shamefully that maybe it was because he got wood from a coffin to make the Ouija board because he didn't have wood at home, and he went to the cemetery where they had like a lot of trash. He found an empty coffin, got the lid of the empty coffin that was made of wood, and thought this would be the perfect piece of wood to make a Ouija board out of. Julio was saying sorry to them. He felt really bad, but he also told them that when he played the Ouija board by himself in his room, that Maria Elena lady was the one talking to him as well. That's when they all started to think, like, what if that coffin, you know, the lid that he took was the coffin of Maria Elena? She explains that maybe they were just really immature, maybe they were really excited, or maybe they were just really dumb. But that same afternoon, they agreed to play with that Ouija board again with Julio. Julio couldn't convince me to play with that thing again. Never mind. I wouldn't play with it or touch it, but I would want to be around. I'm so nosy. I would just want to be like, what is Maria Elena saying? What is she saying? What did she tell you? I'm not going to touch it, but like if you touch it and I'm around, maybe you can give me the info. They decided to go to the park again, and this time it was just her sister, and Julio. The rest of the friends were not around. So they start playing with the Ouija board, and again the spirit of Maria Elena comes through, and that is when her sister asked Maria Elena where was she buried. And she only asked this question because if Julio found this empty coffin, like what happened to her body? Like where could she be? Or was this even Maria Elena's coffin that he found? The grandmother says that she still remembers what the Ouija board answered, and it said me robaron, which translates to they stole me, or like they took me. I don't want to say they robbed me because that means like I got robbed. I think she meant like they stole my body. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? When they got that answer, all three of them got very still and they all started to look at each other. And that's when Julio was like, who robbed you? Like who stole you? Who took you? And that is when the Ouija board spelled out father. Now they were thinking, did her dad, like her father, stole her body? Or was it like a priest, like a father like that? Because again, this coffin was in a cemetery. They were so confused as to what Maria Elena was referring to. By this point, they were desperate. They needed answers. They were asking the Ouija board more questions, but Maria Elena never answered them again. Julio ended up taking the Ouija board that night, and days later, he would tell the sisters that now he was hearing the knockings like a lot harder, a lot faster, almost like if this person was desperate to get out. The grandmother says that after seeing Julio, he looked a lot more scared, and that he even told them that he doesn't know how to get rid of this Ouija board because he doesn't want to deal with it anymore. He would hear the knockings almost like if Maria Elena was in a coffin knocking, like trying to get out of there. She explains that her and her sister were really scared at this point, but they asked Julio to not tell them anything anymore. Like they were so scared they didn't want to hear anything else about the Ouija board. Were they really that scared? Because the next phrase was, we continued to play with the Ouija board several more times, but this time it never moved and Maria Elena never came through. How scared were you really? You told this boy you were so scared, but you went back and played with it some more? Anyway, they played like 2 or 3 more times with Julio, and then Julio went on vacation to the US. Weeks passed, months passed, years passed, and Julio never returned. They did get word from his family members that he was okay, that nothing happened to him. He had simply just stayed in the United States. And because it was like a really long time ago, they didn't have like a cell phone to communicate with Julio or anything like that. She said time has passed and they still have those questions. They still think about Maria Elena, like what does she mean by father? Was she really stolen like her body? They have no idea. But what do you guys think?
What is the creepiest thing that has ever actually happened to you? When I was a kid, I swear my parents hit an 80 to 90-year-old guy along a dirt road, pulled over the car, got out and checked on him, and then got back in and panicked and drove away quickly. I'm pretty sure my dad killed him. I was probably 3 or 4 years old when it happened. My parents deny it has ever happened to this day and chalk it up to imaginative dreams as a child. I think they're lying. For my 5th birthday, my uncle got me a puppet almost identical to this. I was a big Pee-wee fan and I loved it at first. In my room I had bunk beds and slept on the bottom bunk, and on the top I kept all of my favorite toys and stuffed animals. I'd often leave them in really weird formations after having battles and the like. But I always remembered to leave certain ones in certain places because they were my favorites, namely my Ninja Turtles and my Pee-wee. A few months after getting this toy though, I started to have some really terrible nightmares about it. Not the "are you afraid of the dark" kind of early 90s nightmares for kids, but truly graphic and horrible dreams where someone had broken into my house and made me watch him torture my sisters and my parents while the doll just laughed. So I told my parents and they immediately got rid of it. This apparently just meant they hid it in the garage since I couldn't see the stuff stored up high anyways. A couple weeks later I woke up and all of my Ninja Turtles were on the floor. Confusing, but maybe I shook the bed a bunch in my sleep. A few days after this, my older sister woke my parents up, screaming about a dream she had just had. It was nearly identical to the dream I had told them about, but I know she had never heard about it. My parents knew as well, and my mother looked genuinely horrified. I got screamed at for telling my sister about such horrible things, but once it became clear that I hadn't really told her, my mom looked even more worried. I watched her go into the garage, grab Pee-wee, put him in a trash bag, and put him in the dumpster. For years, I'd wake up and my stuffed animals would be in really odd places, places I know I hadn't left them, and places I would have never left them. I was obsessed. When I was 12, I found the Pee-wee toy in a box in the garage. My mom said my dad must have come home, seen it in the trash, and pulled it out. He doesn't remember ever doing that. He swears he didn't know that she even threw it away, let alone to try to pull it out. One of my worst sleep paralysis stories involves someone whispering in my ear saying, "You think I'm your friend, but you have no idea how prepared I am to destroy you." I couldn't see whoever was saying it, I could only hear it. And as sleep paralysis usually goes for me, I was convinced I was in reality, lying in my bed and all. I was getting a haircut. Woman barber was cutting my hair. She was talking, going back and forth, and then she says how beautiful my eyelashes are, talks about how much she wants them. But she can't pluck them because then they'll just die, so she'll take a straight razor she's using to do my edges, slice off a bit of my eyelids, and then sew them onto her own. She got really detailed into how she was going to remove my eyelids. 3 a.m., northern Indiana. Look outside into the woods. 3 white, tall creatures that just looked like torsos with legs standing out there. This actually happened. I'm serious. The only reason why I even tell people is because my friend saw it with me and we still talk about it to this day. At 16 or 17, my friend came by to tutor me in calculus at about 10 p.m. at night. I let my friend drive my car to his house. He lived in the outskirts of town where there's nothing but orchards of almonds. Passed by a cattle ranch with lots of lights. Silence in the car. I'm riding shotgun and I see a bull running on its 2 legs like a human. Bull turns its head towards us. Red glowing eyes. The bull looks like it's getting ready to spin around but then just evaporates. I look towards my friend and ask him, "Did you see that?" My friend replies, "Did it look like a bull running on 2 legs with red glowing eyes and then it just disappeared?" "Yeah, I saw that." 17 years ago, our infant daughter died. It was a hellish period and we were told not to have more kids. But nature happened, and a year later, our younger son was born. One Sunday morning, when he was about 3 months old, we stopped in at a nearby bakery to buy some bagels and cream cheese for breakfast. The store was empty, save for the owner. He packed our order and asked us to meet him at the cash register in the front of the store. While waiting for the store owner, I became aware of an old man standing next to us. We greeted him, a bit startled because neither of us had noticed him. He just had a big, bright smile and pointed to our baby saying, "You paid extra for that one." My wife and I looked at each other briefly and both looked back at the old man, but he had disappeared. We were standing between him and the door, so we know he didn't leave that way. The bakery was still empty. The owner came and we asked him who the old guy was, and he said, "What old guy? No one here but us." I was in the bathroom at school. I'm doing my business when I hear what sounds like crying from one of the other stalls. I feel bad for whoever is in there. As she continues, I hear things like, "It's never gonna get better. It's never gonna go away." Then I become aware of this noise like mac and cheese being stirred. At this point, I'm like, WTF? So I look under the stall. I see a pair of ugly black shoes dangling about 6 inches above the ground, not moving. This was weird to me because with the noise she was making, it would have been hard to keep her feet absolutely still like that. Anyways, I nope out of there. I didn't flush or wash my hands.
My grandmother said she helped deliver a baby that was born with a full set of teeth and also flew around the room. Normally for Spooky Scary Story Time, I'm able to categorize stories. I don't know what to make of this one. Regardless, I'm going to share it. It came from someone named Dolly, and she says her grandmother told her this story, and her grandmother was not the type to make up tall tales. She was not a whimsical woman by any means, but she was raised in a holler in West Virginia in an area that was steeped with mountain traditions and Celtic lore. So make of this what you will. The area where Dolly's grandmother was raised was called Little Heart, in case anyone's familiar with this specific region, but when she was about 14 years old, she was working as an assistant to a local midwife, going around the town and delivering babies. And this would have taken place in about the 1940s. But they get a call, and there is a young girl in town who is about to deliver a baby. But for some reason, this young girl is known as a witch throughout these hollers. And Dolly says her grandmother never went into detail about why this young girl was known as a witch, but mountain superstitions were rampant in these parts, especially at this time. Get to the house, and this girl and her family are extremely poor. This house is little more than a shack with dirt floors. And Dolly's grandmother told her that this baby took forever to be born, which is not that unusual. Labor can be a long and grueling process, but when the baby finally was born, they cut the cord, and the baby, who was born completely in caul, meaning the baby was born inside the unbroken amniotic sac, then took flight around the room before eventually hitting a wall and falling to the floor. The baby did not survive, but when they inspected the baby, they found that it was born with a full set of teeth. And as all of this happened, everyone, so Dolly's grandmother, the midwife, and the girl who had just delivered the baby, were screaming. No one knew how to make sense of what was happening. After that, no one saw the girl in town again. She and her family apparently packed it up and left this area. So Dolly said her grandmother wasn't sure about what became of her, but she did know the baby was not allowed to be buried in consecrated ground. When Dolly asked her grandmother what she believed happened to the baby, her grandmother only told her that she believed that babies like that were born of vampiric spirits and that they were not allowed to live past birth. And Dolly says this story always just bothered her, and she's sharing this to see if there's anyone else out there with grandparents perhaps who have deep mountain roots who know how to make sense of this story. She described her grandmother as an extremely honest woman who was never known to lie, so she had no reason to believe that she wasn't telling her the truth. So she's saying if anyone else out there has similar stories or things they've heard from their own family members who were raised in similar areas, let her know. She'll be seeing the comments. If you have a spooky scary story time or just something strange and unusual that has been passed down to you, let us know. We would love to hear it.
Trigger warning, if you don't like scary things, if you don't like to talk about the paranormal, go ahead and scroll, because if you watch this, you might not get good sleep tonight. I have another scary story submission that was sent to me via email, and we're going to start to read it right now. The email reads, "Hi Casey, I've watched your scary story videos for quite a long time, and after going back and forth on it, I figured that I would send you something that's been hanging over my family for the majority of my life. I don't want my name being used because a lot of people involved are still alive, so if you read this, you can just call me M. This happened in Berea, Kentucky in the summer of 1993. I was 12, my cousin was 13, and our best friend Ethan had lived just a few houses down from us. One afternoon, we were messing around in Ethan's grandparents' old barn. There was junk everywhere. Old trunks, broken furniture, boxes that looked like they had not been opened in decades. That's where we found it, a wooden Ouija board. It wasn't plastic like the ones you see in the stores now. This one was heavy, like really heavy, carved into the wood by hand, and the letters weren't perfectly straight, so it was very clear that somebody had made it themselves. Being dumb kids, we thought it would be funny to play with it. Before we started, Ethan grabbed a pocket knife and carved all three of our initials into the back. E-C-M, right next to each other. Nothing happened while we were playing. At least, that's what we thought. The blanket barely moved. We got bored after 15 minutes and shoved the board back into the trunk. 3 days later, Ethan was unalived riding his bike home. A drunk driver crossed the center line. After his funeral, nobody wanted anything to do with that barn again. Months later, it was torn down. The Ouija board disappeared with everything else. Or at least, we assumed it did. About a year later, my cousin found it leaning against the tree in his backyard. Same board, same carved initials. His dad burned it that night. We all watched it burn. But the next weekend, it was sitting inside of the empty burn barrel. Not scorched, not cracked, it was just there. My uncle threw it into the county landfill himself, but a month later, it showed up in his garage. After that, no one wanted to touch it anymore. Eventually, my grandfather locked it in an old metal toolbox and buried it somewhere on family land. He refused to tell anyone where. Life moved on. We got older. People stopped talking about it. 30 years went by. Last month, my wife and I bought a newly built house outside of Lexington, Kentucky. The neighborhood used to be farmland, but every house on the street is brand new. While the electrician was adding wiring in the upstairs hallway, he called me over. He had found something inside of the wall.
a wooden box. Honestly laughed because I thought maybe it was a time capsule left by the builders. It wasn't. Inside was the Ouija board. Yeah, the same one. I know because I flipped it over before my brain even had time to process what I was looking at. And on the back were the 3 faded initials carved ECM, exactly where they were carved in 1993. I haven't touched it since. It's been sitting in that box in my garage for almost 4 weeks. My wife wants me to throw it away. Part of me wants to, don't get me wrong, but the other part of me keeps thinking about every other time somebody in my family tried. I guess I'm asking you and everyone watching, what would you do? Because I genuinely don't know. Thanks in advance for reading if you choose to read my story, M. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your story and trusting me to share it here on my page. I also want to say I'm really sorry for your loss. Pertaining to the Ouija board, I really wish that I could give you better insight. I've had several really terrifying experiences with Ouija boards, so I don't play with them anymore. It's so strange because I still will do things like tarot cards. You know, I believe in other spiritual forms of connection and things like that, but I just feel like Ouija boards are inherently so terrifying. I wish I had better advice. So if any of you in the comment section have any advice or any expertise on this, or you know somebody with expertise on it, please go ahead, tag them, leave your comments. So that way M can read through your comments and hopefully get this all figured out. I really hope that you figure it out because you guys deserve to enjoy your new house. If you are watching and you want to send in your scary story for a chance to be read on my page, send it to the email above. And if you're new here and you want to keep hearing more scary story submissions, make sure to give me a follow. As always, thank you for watching. Love you. Bye.
Person that sent me the story called it, Is It a Glitch? By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. Hello, Anti-Matrix. Hi, my name is Rob and I live in a small European country, Belgium. Oh, from Belgium. Hello. So my English will glitch here and there. I have a story about my own personal life and I still don't know what to think of it. I'll try to give you as much context as I can and I can make the letter not too long, so here I go. We like the long ones, no worries. 10 years ago in 2016, a good friend of mine and at the time my colleague at work told me that she was dizzy one day, not feeling sick, but like the room was spinning hard if she turned her head a certain way or did some movements that triggered the dizziness. After some weeks of doctor's visits, she had a verdict and needed to take medication to stabilize it until it was finally gone. She also told me that she felt different than before. This was some of the context. Now, a few months passed by and it's the end of May. It was a Sunday and I woke up dizzy. If I tilted my head to the left side, standing and laying down, the room was spinning like crazy. While walking, I felt like I had no balance and it was like I could not walk straight without holding onto something. I didn't think much of it, so I kept it easy that day and while hoping that it would go over quickly. I went to bed, tried to sleep, and I had a dream that it felt real that night. And yes, I still remember a lot of it. In my dream, I was at a doctor's office. 2 women in green doctor's jackets were talking to me. It felt normal, nothing special, talking about the treatment that I was going through. I just needed to be patient and my body will soon adapt, they said. So it is just a matter of time and trusting the doctors at that place to find something to stop it. I woke up again, still dizzy, so I decided to call my doctor and see what was going on. When I was there, I explained everything I was experiencing. Blood was taken to see if they saw something in there and some physical tests as well to trigger the dizziness to see how my body reacts to it. My doctor wrote me home for the rest of the week to wait for the blood results and to rest and see if it will go away. Monday night, I went to bed again and dreamed of the same dream. Not exactly the same, but it looks like I came back to that same doctor's office. Same 2 doctors and same conversation about that I did good to see a doctor there and they're going to find something to make the discomfort go away. I saw a clock in the office and it was 14 hours 10, which is 2:10 a.m. And when I was done with the consultation, I stood up and walked out of the office, passing by a mirror where I could see myself. The person looked like me, but somehow different. And since when can we see clocks and time and reflections in dreams? I was actually just thinking that. I was like, what do you mean you could see what the time was on the clock? What do you mean you could see your reflection? This is not a dream. Waking up again and the blood results were okay. Nothing was wrong. So I went to a specialist in a hospital to do more tests. Don't worry, we don't do high medical bills here. Jealous? But they could not find a thing. I had to stay calm the rest of the week, take the medication, and the week after I had to come back to the hospital to do more tests, neurological tests. They gave me already another doctor's note for the week, so after I could stay home, rest, and do all the tests that they wanted me to do. That night again in bed and dreaming, same setting, same 2 people, same conversation. We were talking about improvements, and they said that they're sure that the doctors there were going to take the discomfort away so I could live there just as good as I expected. It was just me getting adapted to the new body. So I stood up and walked out of the office, and for the first time, I walked outside in the dream, and everything looked very organized, clean, new, modern, like it's in the future, but nothing extreme like flying cars or anything crazy. And then I woke up again. In the following days, I had some medical tests. They gave me the verdict and a new medication. 2 more weeks home to rest and come back to the doctor if needed. After 1 week, the meditation seemed to work. The dizziness was gone and I felt as good as new, but with one difference. My eyesight went a bit down. So I had to wear glasses since that moment. But after that, I was good to go again and everything went back to normal-ish. After this, I had one more dream in that doctor's office and it was to congratulate me so I could start my new life. It was also irreversible, so once I stayed in, it was for good. I felt very happy and left the office and woke up again. After all this, I also had a feeling that I was different in some ways. Still feel in these days, and I don't know what all of this can be. Maybe you have some answers and more knowledge about this happening. P.S. My diagnosis was that I had a shortage of oxygen in my brain where my balance center was triggered and it made me feel dizzy. 3 months later, my sister felt also dizzy and had a totally different diagnosis than me or my friend. It took her also some weeks to get rid of it. I follow your channel now for some months and it made me think about this, so I write it down and maybe get an answer. Thank you for reading and thank you for the amazing content and stories you share with us. I wish you the best and luck in all that you do. The end. Okay, my friend, this is wild. I haven't heard anything like this before. It's giving me vibes of that you are... obviously, I believe that we're all like incarnate again and again and again, right? But it's giving me vibes that like you're from another planet or dimension and you, for some reason, whatever the reason is that they didn't say, and you were excited to do it, so I guess you knew about it and you were excited, you were coming to this dimension and Earth as a human, and they threw you in this body. I wonder if you're a walk-in? And you're like remembering, deciding to walk into the body, but like maybe wherever you're used to being from, like if you were from another planet or another dimension, shit's different there, like oxygen is different there and stuff like that. And so you moving into this human body in this 3D Earth reality was hard on you. And so that's why you kept having the dreams that like in your dreams, like you were like astral traveling to your last place that you were from, whether it was another planet or whatever it was. And they were like, don't worry, we're going to figure this out and you're going to be good. You're going to be good to like stay in your body. And then you were like excited about it. This is what I'm getting. This is what I think. But I would love to hear any other theories or anything. I think this is so, so cool. And thank you so much for sharing.
Do you guys want to hear a true scary story? Can you guys see this filter? When I was a little kid, I actually did a seance and I didn't know what I was doing because I was 7. So after that, I had some extremely haunted experiences in my home because I never closed a portal and said goodbye to it. One of the entities that would haunt me the most was an old woman. And I would always, the way I describe her is I could hear her before I could see her. It would sound like the sound of bones cracking and snapping and heavy breathing every time this entity would present itself to me. This was during the Halloween season because I used to have a snow globe for Halloween as a kid. It had orange and black glitter, I think that's what's inside of it, and a couple of little ghosts. But the kicker, the cute thing about this one is it lit up. So it had an undertone of orange when you would turn it on too. There's a switch on the bottom and it was just really cute. So there was one night I remember I couldn't sleep. I was scared. I felt like something was watching me and I'm tossing and I'm turning. I'm 8, 9 years old, something like that. And then finally, it's in the middle of the night, I don't remember what time, finally able to, I feel a little bit sleepy and I'm like, okay, I can go to bed now. I'm going to try and go to bed. I'm exhausted. And as I'm just about to fall asleep, I hear a crackling and a snapping sound, and it sounded like something was dragging from the hallway. Now, when I was a little kid, my parents didn't believe in we weren't allowed to have like our doors shut. So we always slept with the doors open. And so I'm sitting here, I pulled a blanket over my head. I remember being so scared. I wanted to scream, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to get in trouble, waking my parents up in the middle of the night, especially because my dad worked a lot and he was a truck driver. So when he'd come home from his truck routes or his routes, whatever, he'd be exhausted. So I knew that as a kid to not like wake my parents up unless it was an absolute emergency. And then the sound just gets closer and closer and closer, and it just sounds heavier, and then it stops like right outside my door. And then I hear raggedy breathing, and then nothing. It goes completely silent. It's not over. From under the blanket, because like I said, I had the blanket covering my head, I see a small light turn on, and it's my Halloween snow globe. I see like the orange light, because it's fairly bright, especially in the pitch black. I see it like light up outside of the blanket, because the blanket wasn't very thick, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it stayed on. And I remember I stayed in that position. It had to have been for like 10 minutes. I kept counting to 60 in my head over and over, listening for anything, and I didn't hear anything. So finally, after calming myself down and crying and being barely able to breathe because I have the damn blanket over my head, I decide, okay, I'm going to take out the blanket, I'm going to rip off the Band-Aid, and I'm going to look around. Rip out the blanket, look at the snow globe, and nothing's there. The snow globe is on, the light is on, but no one's there. And so I felt better after that. I'm like, okay, maybe I just like heard that. Maybe I was just scaring myself. And then out of my peripheral vision, I just kind of see something at the door, like at my door. After I'm looking at the snow globe, which is over here, and my door is like over here. I hear just like breathing at my door. And I look over and I see this demonic old woman that used to haunt me only for like, dude, it was 1 second maybe. She was sitting in my doorway and she did this and then she disappeared. And I remember I was horrified because she was terrifying. She was smiling and it happened so fast. She was gone in the speed of light. But I was terrified because I knew she had been, and this is what my 8-year-old brain is thinking, walked into my room, turned on the snow globe and walked back to the door to scare me. That's just what I try to rationalize it with, but let's just say it was never easy for me to sleep at night as a child for obvious reasons. Be wary if you have any snow globes or night lights that nothing else is turning them on. Bye.
A viewer emailed me after watching one of my videos, and he had asked me not to use his real name because he still works in the freight industry. And he told me that he'd spent nearly 15 years driving trucks throughout the Pacific Northwest, and most of the time he hauled ordinary freight. But the last 3 years had been a little different for him, and he'd been contracted by a private logistics company that paid exceptionally well, but every shipment came with one rule, and that is to not ask any questions. And he said he transported some strange cargo over the years, but nothing compares to one delivery that still keeps him kind of awake at night. And it was late one rainy evening, and he was instructed to pick up a single object from an old stone monastery that was tucked away in the mountains. And waiting outside were 2 elderly priests and several silent men that were dressed in black, and he thought maybe they were some other type of clergymen as well. They carried out an ancient iron relic that was about the size of like a toolbox, he said. It was wrapped in heavy chains, sealed with dark red wax, and engraved with faded Latin inscriptions that he couldn't even read. Now, before placing it inside a reinforced steel shipping container, one of the priests rested his hands on it and made the sign of the cross and quietly whispered something that he knew to be Latin, but he couldn't quite make out what it was. But later on, he had learned roughly that it translated to, "May it protect those who live under the curse." And he assumed it was maybe part of some old, religious tradition. He wasn't really religious himself, but the destination wasn't a church where he had to deliver it to. It wasn't even a town. It was just GPS coordinates that were buried in the forest of Washington. And when he finally arrived after hours of driving through logging roads, 6 men were already waiting for him outside, and they all wore identical dark clothing with no logos or markings, and none of them introduced themselves, and none of them smiled. They resembled the men at the first location. And what unsettled him most wasn't how they looked, it was how disciplined they were. Every movement, he said, was like deliberate and scripted. Every person seemed to know exactly what to do without speaking. It was very choreographed. And as they began unloading the container themselves, one of the heavy steel doors had shifted open just enough for him to glance inside. And that's when he froze, because inside, on the walls of the reinforced container, were these massive claw marks that were covering it. They weren't scratches, Not deep gouges that were ripped into the steel by machinery. No, 4 perfectly parallel grooves that ran across the walls. Some were several feet long, and the metal had actually curled outward as though something unimaginably powerful had tried to claw its way out from the inside. And there were no signs of cutting tools, no torch marks, no grinder residue, just torn steel. And he reached out and ran his fingers across one of the grooves, and he said it was real. Like, when he turned around, every member of the group had stopped what they were doing, and they were all just staring directly at him. There was no anger in their faces, there was no panic, just complete silence. Then the eldest man had stepped forward, and he gently lifted the chain to the relic into his arms, and the others instinctively lowered their heads as if whatever it contained was very sacred or very dangerous. And the driver left without another word from anybody, and a few weeks later he tried looking up the logistics company, and it was gone. There was no business records, there was no website, it was nothing. It was like done through like a party, through like another party. And he ended his email with me that this still gives him chills, and he doesn't know what those people believed, but he knows that they were protecting whatever relic this was, and he believes that they were protecting whatever the relic was keeping contained. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you've heard anything about this before in the Pacific Northwest. I'm not from there, so I have no idea, but let me know what you guys think and if you've seen this before.
Phoenix, Arizona, over the last couple of days have seen these dust storms, 2 of them being very, very strong, which they consider a Cat 5. Now, what's interesting about this is I just reported about a man in Payson who had a very strange encounter, seeing what he described as this glowing dragon-like creature moving along the desert floor. Now, not too far in the Fountain Hills, Fort McDowell area, there was a gentleman this morning who had a very strange encounter. He said he was driving to work. It was completely dark outside. And he said as he drove down the road, he began to see the dust move in. And he said visibility got very, very low. And he said as he kind of looked through the dust out into the desert, he noticed some figures. And he said at first he thought maybe these were just some very large cactus. But he said he noticed they were moving. And each time he would look back from the road over to the desert, he said he would see these things get closer. And as they came into sort of picture or into his vision, he noticed these things look like very tall stick figures that were moving very erratically. So they got to within about 15 to 20 feet of his vehicle, and they just disappeared. He didn't know what they were. He didn't know what he encountered, but he said he felt like whatever it was, it had some association with the dust storm. So what do you think? Is there something weird about all these dust storms happening in the Phoenix area? Texas is a hotspot for black-eyed children sightings. Now, the first sighting goes back to 1996 in Abilene, Texas. And since then, there have been hundreds of documented reports of people encountering the black-eyed children in Texas. Now, there was a very terrifying encounter just outside of Abilene, Texas, in a place called Albany. There was this 80-year-old woman named Helen. Now, Helen lived alone in the same house for 40 years. She said one night she was alone watching TV when she heard a knock at the front door. Well, she gets up, she starts thinking to herself, like, who would be at my door this late at night? I don't think I should open it. So she just ignores it. But then the knocking starts getting louder, and then it turns into banging. And whoever this is, they are banging extremely hard on this door, so much so that it's actually vibrating the house. So she walks to the door, and she says, go away. I'm not interested, like, leave, it's too late, leave my house. But then she hears a voice. It's her son. He says, Mom, it's me, let me in. So she's like, Brian, what are you doing here at 11 o'clock at night? So she opens the door, But to her surprise, when the door opens, she sees these two children. They look around 11, 12 years old. They're dressed in all black. There's a little girl, she's got a black dress on. The young boy has some kind of black suit on. And she says, "Oh, you know, what are you doing at my door at 11 o'clock at night?" And they said, "Please, help us. We're lost. Let us come inside." And she's like, what do you mean you're lost? And they go, "We're lost. Can we use your phone? Let us come inside." So she said, "You know, why were you banging on the door? Why didn't you just use the doorbell?" And both these kids, they look kind of puzzled, like they had no idea what she was talking about, like they had no idea what a doorbell was. So she felt bad, and she thought maybe they were in danger. So she opens her door, she lets them in. So she says, "Look, I'm going to go find my cell phone. I'm going to call for help. We'll figure this out." So she goes to get her cell phone, and these kids run off. And they start going into different rooms around the house. And they're jumping on beds, they're screaming, they're making all kinds of ruckus, they're breaking things. And so she goes, you know, from bedroom to bedroom, following them around, and she starts saying, like, "You need to leave, you need to get out of my house." And they start laughing at her. They say, "Helen, we are never leaving." She said, "Look, I don't know who you kids are, it's time to go." And she said the one kid, the boy, he grabs her arm, which his hand felt ice cold, and he looks her right in the eyes. And that's when she realized he had these solid, big, black eyes. This was not a boy. This was something else. So she runs out of the house, goes to the neighbor, tells him what's going on. The neighbor goes over to her house, but when he goes inside, there's no one there. And he says to Helen, "You know, are you sure? Like, this happened, like, you know, it's late. Were you tired? Maybe you had a dream?" She goes, "No, I'm telling you, these kids came into my house and there was something off about them." And that's when the neighbor notices these little footprints leading directly towards the woods.
The series of spooky stories, except for its woman's intuition. My friend and I went to a McDonald's after a late night theater rehearsal. I was dropping her off at her house, but both of us decided to stop and get some food. While we were waiting for our food, there was a homeless man inside that came up to both of us and asked if we were tech savvy. We told him no, but he kept pushing to have a conversation. We kept dodging the questions until he eventually walked away. As my friend and I were still waiting, my friend kept getting a weird feeling about the homeless guy. At first, I didn't think anything of it until I watched the same homeless guy ask an older man the same question, but he walked away after the man told him no. I got a really weird feeling after watching that interaction. My friend and I agreed that something didn't feel right. So we asked one of the McDonald's employees to walk us to my car because we both felt really uncomfortable. The second the employee walked away from the car, the homeless man started walking towards the direction of my car. We got in and locked the doors and watched him slowly pass by my car until he walked into the parking lot of the gas station next to us, walking up to another woman. Forever thankful that my friend spoke up to me about her feelings because I probably would have brushed it off if I wasn't careful. Pause in the programming. My website is officially live. I will soon be available on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. But for now, the website is up and all of my long form content will be posted on there. I was going to have a video posted today, but unfortunately, the app that I chose to film in landscape as well as portrait recorded my 30-minute episode and then deleted it twice. So I got incredibly heated and I just gave up for right now because I didn't want to read that 30-minute story again. That will be posted tomorrow though, for certain. It's just gonna be in portrait mode for now. Back to the program. Both me and my boyfriend had both these things happen. Back in 2024, my boyfriend had a dream of a blonde, blue-eyed little boy in the bath that called him dad. We both thought it was weird because neither one of us wanted kids, so we brushed it off. A few weeks later, he had another dream of the same boy running around in his mom's house laughing because he was chasing him. Again, we both just brushed it off. In December, I found out that I was pregnant. We both knew from that moment that it was a boy. While pregnant, I had a terrible pregnancy, and every day I had a gut feeling that my son was going to be born early. Had no idea how I knew, but I knew. He was born 3 months early and was in the NICU. Doctors told me that he wasn't going to make it, and I had a gut feeling telling me that they were wrong, and he was going to be just fine. After 3 months, we were sent to the Children's Hospital in Colorado, where again I was told that he wasn't going to make it, or if he did, he was going to need a ton of medical care. I trusted trusted my gut. My son graduated the NICU in February and is a thriving, happy, healthy boy with the biggest smile. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have the gut feeling that he was going to be okay. My mom and I, both in different places away from the hospital, had the exact relief and the joy the moment my nephew was born. Then 2 minutes later, we got the text. About 2 years ago, my sister had a miscarriage. She was 5 months pregnant with a boy, I'm pretty sure. I didn't want to tell anyone I had a feeling that she might miscarry because I've always been told by my mom growing up if I say something negative like that, it's going to come true. I couldn't hold it in anymore since I was always in contact with my sister, and I finally told my older cousin because I just had a gut feeling. I couldn't shake it off, and I told her that my older sister might have a miscarriage, and she told me that I'm just worried since she's up in age. 4 weeks later, I went on a walk to clear my mind because I genuinely couldn't shake the feeling off, and an hour into my walk, my mom called me, and the first thing that popped in my head was my sister miscarried her son. When I picked up the phone, my mom told me to come home right away, and I asked her if she had miscarried her baby. She asked me, how'd you know, and if my sister called me, and I said no. When I went home, she genuinely asked me how'd I know, and I told her that I had a feeling since she told me that she was pregnant. Also, a year later, I went to my sister's house and asked her if she was pregnant. She looked at me and said, how'd you know? I shrugged my shoulders and said, I don't know. Apparently, she was 1 month pregnant, and she didn't want to tell anyone because of her miscarriage the past year. Come back for another part, and don't forget to go visit thehauntedteaspill.com. I'm going to have a Discord that is especially for my subscribers, and you guys are going to help decide on true crime stories for the week. Phone died, and it's on the charger at 1%, so I'm not able to use my microphone, so I apologize for the terrible audio quality. But my subscribers will help me decide on what topics we want to talk about that week, whether it's conspiracy theory or it's a true crime story. I have an idea of one that I want to cover next week, and then if I have any subscribers by then hopefully we'll be able to be in the Discord talking about like certain topics and stuff like that, throwing out ideas. I hope to have merch soon, and then also like I upcycle clothes, and I've done several like really cool like I've done a Michael Myers shirt. It's like cut up and then I put flannel sleeves on it, as well as I did a Scream one recently, stuff like that, because I know not everybody wants to wear merch, and that's totally okay. I get it. But I thought it would be cool to have like prizes and stuff like that for subscribers, and then keeping subscribers like involved in the content as well. That video will be posted tomorrow. I'm bound and determined. I'm just gonna go with the portrait mode. I was really upset because the quality looked really, really good. I'm trying to like up the quality when it comes to that. But you know, when you turn your phone sideways, you have to like look wherever the camera is, and it just looks weird instead of like looking like it looks like you're looking straight ahead. You know what I mean? So the app just did not like me, so we're just gonna go with portrait mode. That video will be posted for sure tomorrow. It'll be about 30 minutes, give or take. It was 30 minutes ish both times that I recorded it. So there will be one tomorrow. Thank you everyone for your support, and I will see you at the next episode.
A lot of people ask me, is all that stuff about the Appalachia true? Like, does creepy stuff really happen there? Now, there are people who've lived their whole life in the Appalachia, and they'll tell you, I haven't seen anything. But there are many other people who say they close their curtains at night. They lock their doors. They don't go outside, and they don't like to look out the window because there's definitely something weird going on in the Appalachian Mountains. Now, this story takes place in eastern Tennessee. There was this family who moved into this very old farmhouse. It was in a pretty rural, remote area up in the Appalachian Mountains, and they were probably about 45 minutes away from the nearest town. Well, after several months of living in this place, the husband and wife were sitting in the living room one night. And out of nowhere, they began to get this feeling that they should look at the corner of the room for some reason, like something was going to happen. And so they both fixated their heads towards the far corner of this living room. And so that's when they began to see this eerie glow appear on the wall. And almost this swirling portal seemed to appear out of nowhere. And that's when they witnessed a man all of a sudden in the room with them. They had no idea they didn't know who he was. He looked like he was from the 1940s, 1930s. He was dressed in very old-timey clothing. And he just stood there, tipped his hat. And so the husband, thinking there's an intruder, jumps up off the couch and he runs over to this man. But when he gets to him, he disappears in front of his eyes. And so the family got very freaked out. They didn't know what had happened. Well, over the next couple of weeks, the wife, the kids, they keep telling the husband, you know, we see people walking around outside in the yard and near the driveway, and they seem to look like they're just wandering, like they're confused and they don't know where they're going. So the husband starts looking around this area for other homes, and he knocks on some of the houses and he says, you know, have you been on my property? Have you been walking around? And everybody in the area says, no, like we haven't been anywhere near your property. There's no kids in this area. Like there's no one that hangs out in the woods near your home. So he was confused as to who these people were. Well, one night he was in one of the rooms working on a project. And his wife comes running in saying, honey, the kids have just said they've seen a bunch of people out by the trees. So the husband instantly jumps up, he runs outside, and he goes in this direction of where the kids say they've seen these people. Well, he follows their directions and he ends up out in the middle of the woods. And he starts looking around. He doesn't see anything, but then he hears a noise up in the tree. And as he looked up into the trees, he said there must have been 20, 25 people who were just 20 to 30 feet up in the trees. And he said all these people looked like they were from the 1930s, 1940s. He said, but something seemed off about them. They didn't seem human. And they were just hanging onto the tree looking down at him. So he runs into his house and he grabs his rifle and he goes back. But when he gets there, all of them are gone. And so he said, you know, he went back to the house and that sort of messed with him because he had never experienced anything like that. So he tells his wife and kids, get in the car, and they left that day and went to the grandmother's house, and they never went back to that house. But he said there's definitely something weird going on in the Appalachian Mountains.
Just when I thought I knew about all the different kinds of cryptids, a new one pops into my life. This story took place in September of 2020. A couple was preparing to leave a property in Aiken, South Carolina, and saw something unreal. The sighting followed weeks of unexplained movement around the property, but one unsettling feature made the figure unlike anything they could even have imagined. The woman telling the story would like to be referred to as A. So A's fiance, whom she refers to as G for the story, had reconnected with an old friend from high school, and we're going to call that friend B. So she says, we rented and renovated the basement of B's house while searching for a place of our own. It was a separate apartment with its own entrance at the back of the house. The property was not in a neighborhood. It seemed rural to her, with several acres separating the neighboring houses. Woods bordered the backyard. A perfect setting for some creepy cryptids. So B also had two large adult dogs weighing approximately 55 to 65 pounds, which is important for the story later. But A and G's dog was slightly smaller. They often ran and played in the woods at the edge of the backyard. So they became very familiar with the sound of animals their size moving through the undergrowth. She says, everything seemed fine during our first few weeks there, but then we began feeling extremely uneasy whenever we went outside at night. She goes, I know that sounds a little cliche, but it felt as though something was standing in the woods and watching us. And y'all, never underestimate your gut feeling. She said, if we returned home after dark, we would speed walk, almost running from the car at the front of the house, around the side and down to the entrance in the backyard. And then they began to hear it. She said, because the dogs regularly played in the woods, we knew what a 60-pound animal sounded like moving through the trees. So whatever was making these sounds seemed much larger. She goes, it was not simply the three of us frightening one another. The house had a swimming pool, so we received a fair number of visitors. And other people heard the movement as well, and no one wanted to remain outside after sunset. Now, at first they assumed it was a bear. Whatever was moving through the woods sounded enormous, much larger than a person, and a bear was the only explanation that seemed to fit. So a few months passed, and A and G found a place of their own, and they were in the process of moving out when this encounter occurred. So G was near the car arranging boxes so they could make the most of the available space, and A had just carried a box to him and was about to walk back around the side of the house. The yard sloped slightly downhill from the front of the property towards the back. She says, as I walked down the slope toward our basement entrance, I saw it. Now A describes this thing in detail in just a little bit, so hang tight. She goes, it was staring directly at me, straight into my eyes. I am certain it felt like my heart had stopped for several seconds and I completely froze. Some instinct eventually made her begin walking again, and she felt like she could not run though. She tried to behave normally while getting herself inside as quickly as possible. So she shuts the back door but then immediately unlocks it and then opened it again. She said, I could not leave my fiance outside with that thing. She goes, gruesome images suddenly entered my mind. I imagined G and me beheaded, mangled, and lying on the apartment floor with everything around them smashed. And it just gets crazier. She then had a thought that followed. She thought to herself, no, this is not what it will do. My fear of the unknown is making me unreasonable, and if I let it inside, it will not be like that. And then she experienced the inexplicable urge to invite it in, as though it was like taking over her freaking mind. She said, I wanted to call out to G, but I was afraid that yelling might startle the figure. I also did not want him to rush towards the door and give it an opportunity or the instinct to attack him. Finally, she couldn't stand it any longer and she pulled the door open, intending to run to the car, but G was already right there. He had seen the figure too. He had been watching it watch them. And G said as soon as it turned and disappeared into the woods, that's when he hurried down to the apartment door. This is what they both agreed it looked like. The figure was extraordinarily tall, extremely thin, and a sickly shade of whitish gray. Its eyes appeared brightly illuminated. One particularly confusing detail is that A remembers its eyes as golden, while G insists they were red, and she cannot explain that. She said the worst part of its appearance was that it did not have a mouth. Other than the bright eyes, its face appeared to be tightly stretched, perfectly smooth skin. She said, I had never experienced such a powerful feeling that something was profoundly wrong. I remember wondering how something without a mouth could even eat or remain alive. Very interesting, all of these thoughts that go through your head in moments. A says, sometimes I worry that I had an opportunity to encounter an entirely different species and allowed fear and judgment to ruin it. The figure was unlike me, so I was terrified of it. I still wonder whether I had a genuine reason to be afraid or not. She said, if it had wanted to hurt us, I'm convinced it could have. G said he felt evil radiating from it. He believes that she should stop blaming herself because, in his opinion, it did not have friendly intention. She said, I know the account sounds completely unbelievable. I probably would not believe it if it was someone else telling me the same story. She says, I only want to know whether anyone has seen something similar and might have an explanation for what it was. For months afterwards, she refused to discuss. Whenever G mentioned the encounter, she ended the conversation. She was afraid that somehow it would know that she was thinking of and that it would return and find her again. She said, we no longer live near the property and I now recognize that that fear is irrational. But you know what? I don't know. Like, that thing had a hold of her mind, I think. which goes far beyond my thoughts of what I initially thought when I hear this, like kind of like the appearance of what people say the rake is. Although that not having a mouth thing and the mind stuff, I don't know. He said neither of us told anyone close to us because they could not reveal the experience and risk damaging an important relationship with someone who might never look at them the same way again. So what do you guys think? Is this a rake or an entirely new species of cryptid that I've never heard before? Maybe you have. Are we talking alien because of the whole mind stuff? I don't know. Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you have your own cryptid story, please share it. If you're interested in my Creepy Storytime merch, check out the LINK in my bio. And if you're new here, you gotta follow for more Creepy Storytime.
Alright, so this happened to me a few years ago when I was driving home late at night by myself. It was around 2 a.m. and I was taking back roads that cut through forests and open fields and stuff, if you know what I mean. Very middle of nowhere vibes, if you know what I mean. I had driven this road hundreds of times at night. It was my favorite road to ride at night. There were no cars, no people. Very rarely did I see animals or anything like that. I'm driving, I'm minding my business, I'm listening to my music when all of a sudden I see a person up ahead. Which is weird for two reasons, because one, there's no houses, no gas stations, no reason why anybody should be out there so late at night. Secondly, it was weird because this person was wearing what seemed to be like a long white nightgown type attire. And she was just standing there barefoot facing away from the road, back towards me, facing the opposite direction. At this point, my brain is doing gymnastics trying to figure out what is going on here. Like, you know, maybe their car broke down somewhere, maybe they were a hiker or something and they got lost and they just found the road. It could have been a number of things, right? So I start to slow down a little bit as I pass by her to kind of like see if she needed any help or anything. I was just about to ask her if she was okay when I noticed that she had no face. I know how this sounds. I know how this sounds, okay? And this is why I don't talk about it very often, because I know you guys are gonna be like, oh, she's just schizophrenic. Oh, she just... But I swear on my father's life, on my grandmother's life, on my sister's life, on my mother's life, that this thing had absolutely no face. It wasn't even like it was like a person who was disfigured or had an injury on their face that made it look like they had no face or anything. Like, it literally was just smooth nothing. When I tell you I damn near crashed my car when I saw that, obviously I didn't know how to register what I was seeing. I mean, would you? I hit the gas so fast and sped out of there, my heart pounding out of my freaking chest. Not even daring to look in the rearview mirror or in any of the side mirrors or anything. I just kept driving for the next 20 minutes until I got home. But things got even worse. Because when I got home, dude, first of all, obviously I sat in the parking lot trying to like gain my composure and just like walk myself through what the fuck I had just seen, what had just happened. Trying to calm myself down. I'm like, you know, it's just your mind playing tricks on you. It's just like a trick of a light, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it was just, you're tired, you know? I was literally gaslighting myself. But then my motion light came on. I used to live in one of those neighborhoods where like there's not very many people and it's mostly just like woods and animals around. So I was like, okay, maybe it's an animal, whatever. So I start walking up to my porch and I swear to fucking Jesus, I swear on everyone I know and love, there were two wet, bare footprints. Like, just on, like, oh my god. Oh, I'm gonna throw up just thinking about it. Fucking gross, 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 gross. Just two bare fucking wet footprints right in front of my door. Like, freshly wet footprints, dog. They would not have been there that long if they had been there earlier, if somebody had, like, come by to my house earlier. No, I think, no, I did not like that. But what was I gonna do? So I went inside and went about my fucking life. And obviously I don't live there anymore. We live in a city now, I would say kind of like a smaller type city and just far away from bumfuck nowhere. As Courage the Cowardly Dog says, creepy stuff happens in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, I don't know. I can't help but think that maybe this had some kind of connection to the entity that is attached to me. But let me know what you think in the comments and yeah.
Hello my icon legend queens, I've got a new mic, but sit down with cup of coffee and cup of tea because we're going to talk about another paranormal story. But this story's long, so I might have to do part 2, okay? So back in college, I worked at a bar. After closing, we usually stay for another hour or two, practicing cocktails, playing darts or pool, and just hanging out before heading home. It was one of them places that no one was ever in a hurry to leave. There was me, my two co-workers around my age, a guy and a girl, and one of our regular customers who I'll call A. It was sometime after 2 a.m. Maybe because of the hour, but A suddenly suggested, want to go and check out a haunted house? He said he had a friend, I'll call him B. B was very known for being able to see spirits, see the paranormal, everything like that. And if B decided to drive us, then we could go and see him and all just pile into his car. There was an abandoned house everyone in my hometown knew about. We'll call it the Hotter House. It stood by itself, separated by the neighbourhood homes and empty lots. A tall iron gate and fences surrounded the property. The yard had been long swallowed by weeds. Near the front porch sat a rusted tricycle and an old swing set, as the family had just vanished one day. Nobody had ever lived there for years. The rumours never stopped. People claimed they'd seen something standing in the window, but the house was empty. One of them said that they heard low moaning voices from inside. The most common warning for that property was, never cross the property. If you cross the fence, something follows you home. Eventually, B decided to drive us. On the way there, we passed another famous haunted location in our area. For some reason, we drove past it. B smiled to himself. Not like a friendly smile, more like he was looking at something only he could see. I remember wanting to ask him why, but something decided to tell me not to. B barely spoke. He always said he could see spirits, but he never talked about it. He just kept driving, and when we arrived, we got out of the car and slowly walked outside to the fence. Nothing happened, no strange sounds, no figures in the window. The girl and I quietly looked at the abandoned tricycle and whispered, maybe all them stories were just rumours. Honestly, I figured we'd just look around for another minute and then head back. Then our male co-worker, I'll call him C, all right, it's time to go inside. We immediately objected. Wait, isn't that trespassing? But if no one goes in, it isn't much of a ghost hunt. He laughed. We walked over the fence, grabbed on the top rail and started climbing over. The instant he lifted himself onto the gate, B lunged forward behind him. He grabbed C around the waist with surprising force and yanked him back down hard. Without even looking towards the house, B said one thing, we're leaving, get in the car. His voice sounded so serious that no one argued except C, who complained the whole way back, and we finally returned the bar. Someone asked B, did you say something back there? B stayed silent for several seconds. He looked directly at C. The moment you started climbing over the fence, a man appeared in front of you. His eyes, they were completely back. If you leaned forward even a little farther, you would have walked straight into him. He paused. I don't know what happened if you had, but what I felt wasn't just hostility. It wanted you to come closer. It was waiting for you. That's why I pulled you back. I'll never go into that haunted house. As far as I know, it's still standing. So if this is your warning to not go in that haunted house, let's not go into that haunted house. Anyways, I love you and leave you. Love you so much. Give me a like, follow, and repost. Bye.
Want to get creeped out? Let's talk about the haunted rooms of Loftus Hall, which also is going to lead me to a story about a haunted doll at a thrift store that I literally could not take home because it made me so sick to my stomach. Loftus Hall is located in Wexford, Ireland. It was originally built in 1350 and then rebuilt in the 1870s. This place is famous for its Anne Tottenham legend. What is the Anne Tottenham legend? Well, it was a regular evening when a mysterious man knocked on the door of Loftus Hall. He arrived during a storm and claimed he was a shipwreck survivor and asked if he could stay with the Tottenham family. They agreed. That evening, they all played a card game. During the card game, Anne dropped a card. When she bent down to pick up the card, she noticed that this mysterious man had cloven hooves instead of feet. He realized that she witnessed this, and he allegedly burst into flames and vanished through the ceiling, leaving a hole. Do you think insurance covers that? I don't think so. I don't think they even had insurance back then, but still. Could you imagine? I used to be an insurance broker for like 10 years. Hi, the devil came to my house and burst into flames and shot through the ceiling, and now there's a hole. Also, if that story sounds familiar to you, it's because it is familiar. We'll talk about Mount Pelier Hill in a second. Now, here's some of the paranormal activity that people have experienced while visiting Loftus Hall. Feeling chills or feeling pressure on them when sitting in some rooms, which I don't like the pressure thing. That's kind of creepy. Feeling sudden nausea, dizziness, or emotional overwhelm. I had this happen to me one time when I went to a haunted location where I started bawling and having a panic attack. And I was like, oh, that's what they mean about this happening. Like, it's happening to me now. Also, I mean, I live my life kind of nauseous, to be honest, but I was at a thrift store recently and I asked the owner, because I always do this, do you have anything in here that you think is haunted? And he brought me to this doll. I'm going to show a picture of her, but if you don't want to look, you might not want to, okay? Anyway, this is her. When I tell you that I felt sick to my stomach, nauseous from just looking at her, I have never had that kind of reaction to anything haunted. And this was like literally like 2 weeks ago. And normally when a thrift shop owner is like, yeah, I do think something's haunted, and they don't bring me to like a fucking $1,000 antique desk that I can't afford. Normally, if it's something I can afford, I'm like, you're coming home with me. You're coming home with me. I couldn't bring her home. I had to walk away. I was like, you're right. There was something going on here. And it scared me. And I collect haunted dolls and I sell some because I have so many. And I was like, oh, maybe if like she's cool, she can hang out. I couldn't bring her home. Anyways, back to what people experience in Loftus Hall. People have the sensation like they're being watched or touched. And I've said this before, consent. Okay. I don't care if you're dead. Consent. You asked me permission before you touch me. Okay. I don't care if you're alive or if you're dead. Thank you. Regardless, they feel this, especially when sitting in chairs and especially in the tapestry room and the devil's room. The room where the devil shot up through the ceiling. Paranormal investigators have captured EMF spikes near some of the furniture in this room as well. Some guests say sitting in certain chairs would give them nightmares at night. Others reported seeing shadow figures appear in reflective surfaces behind them while they were seated in the devil's room. And a few visitors even stated that they felt like they were being held down in the chair, like they could not stand stand up, as if something was holding them in place. That is not a version of paranormal that I want to experience. Most of this paranormal activity is believed to be tied to Anne Tottenham, who allegedly fell into madness after this encounter with the man with the cloven hooves for feet. She's said to haunt the house. Here's some things you might not have known about this one. Like I said, this mysterious guest vanished through the ceiling in a ball of flames. The damaged section remains distinctly mismatched, sparking ongoing speculation that this really happened. Also, this is sad. During renovations, workers found the remains of an infant bone stuffed into the wall, which is it's just really sad and messed up, and I don't like that, obviously. Loftus Hall wound up being a convent for a while, and then a school, and later a hotel hosting ghost hunts. Now, like I said, if the devil at the card game story sounded familiar to you, then you might have heard it because the same thing happened at Mount Helier Hill during a card game held by the real Hellfire Club. Not kids playing D&D on Stranger Things. Fucking love Stranger Things and D&D though. I'm a nerd. But anyways, go to part 2 to hear about that.
A series of spooky stories except for its woman's intuition. I had a dream of a child that looked like my sister's 6-year-old baby girl, just darker in complexion. She was with my grandma who had passed away, but said that she was fine with grandma. I told my sister the dream and she confessed that she had a miscarriage, which was her first pregnancy, and saw a medium who confirmed that the baby was a girl. I'm so sorry to interrupt the program, but I have to tell you guys, long form content is officially here. My channel is live! TheHauntedTeaspill.com, babe. Check it out. I'm going to be available on Roku TV, Fire TV, Apple TV. I'm going to be on the screen, okay? If you want to watch long form content, if you want to be involved in the community, I'm going to be creating a Discord for my subscribers. You'll get like options for merch, cute little prizes and all this other stuff. And then you can help me decide what I want to do on each week's video. I plan to do like a couple of videos a week, but you'll be able to help me pick out like topics and stuff. I've been dropping the little gem in my videos here and there, but I got the news today that the channel is officially live. So if you want to subscribe, please do so. My mom always jokes that we're witches and we came from witches. I've always had a weird intuition and feelings, but I also have OCD, so I never believe it fully. I had a friend who lived on the other side of the country. She had mental health issues and lost a lot of family members in a short time period. I always knew when she was feeling worse, even when she didn't text me. One time I had a hard time sleeping, eventually woke up early with panic setting in, and I was immediately thinking about that friend. I couldn't calm down and I couldn't get rid of this sinking feeling. She wasn't texting me the entire morning, and I just knew that something was very wrong. At 11 p.m. she finally texted me saying that she had an unaliving attempt in the early morning and just got back from the hospital. I predicted a lot of her other attempts and knew when she was about to text. An urgency. I sometimes got a feeling and would text her, but she wouldn't respond to me for days later, telling me that she had a hard time / felt like doing something bad at the same time that I was trying to get a hold of her. We lost contact now, and as bad as it sounds, I feel relieved because it was rough dealing with the actual situations and those intuitive feelings. That is sad for literally every party involved, especially her. I can't imagine how much she was struggling. Come back for another part tonight. I just really wanted to do a short one so I could announce my channel going live. Very excited.
I'm finally free. I found my mother brutally when I was 15 years old, and that's a really good icebreaker, or a really bad one. I guess it depends who you're talking to, but most people will go into the obvious fake care overdrive at the old, oh, I'm so sorry, being the most prominent comeback, and are you okay now usually follows. Of course I'm not okay, you insufferable dimwit, is what I want to say, but instead I'll say, yeah, I'm fine, all good, moved on, I'm healed. And they'll say, so, did they catch the murderer? Yeah, I'll nod, my head hung all low. It was my father. And man, the looks I will get, it's like, they're already pitying me, you know, but now we're delving deeper into a yet to be discovered just level of awkward sympathy that they just can't deal with. And I'll stop talking for a bit, eyes searching to rest anywhere but on me. So I'll just blurt out, she was mutilated. Her eyes missing, stabbed inwards or something, tongue split in half, intestines tied around her waist like a belt, organs lacerated and stretched out over her feet like makeshift tissue shoes. Her heart carved out and chopped up into a million pieces scattered around her body. Her body's just sinking into a deep pool of blood and piss like corpse juice bath. They all turn pale and their dry mouths swallowing deeply.
looking for literally any excuse to get the hell out of there, but I won't let them. I need them to hear this, need them to know how much I hate him. So I'll note coldly, he took his time to tormented her for hours, razor cuts all over her body, like that torture method, the death by 1,000 cuts. Most of the mutilation was done prior to death too. Can't imagine that level of pain. Possible. Resignation then. They're too deep now. They can't just excuse themselves and leave. I mean, that would be rude, insensitive. So they'll sigh and start just silently nodding along to everything I say. Those puppy dog sympathetic eyes just kind of locked on my forehead, terrified still of ever making eye contact. And I do hate him, but not for that. I hate him for kicking me around, messing me up every other day, hospital visits weekly with black and blue and yellow bruises all over my body, never to fully heal. I hate him for calling me worthless, stupid, ugly. But does he deserve to die? No. I want him to suffer for what he did. Every second of every day, suffocating on his rotting soul. I want him to grow old. Real old. And never know a moment's peace. So, no, he doesn't deserve to die. But she did. My mother did. And that's why I killed her. For all those times she looked the other way. For all the times that she let him abuse and torture me. And I freed my father for it. And now I'm free.
Someone is knocking on this man's bedroom door from inside of his house, but every time he opens the door, there's no one there. Welcome back to another episode of Creepy Corner with Ken. Like always, if you guys have any stories that you want me to share on here, you can send it to the email that's in my bio, but let's go ahead and get into the story because it is absolutely wild. He writes that it was a Sunday when it all started. Even though he was a janitor at a hospital and had to wake up early, he ended up staying up till about a little after midnight, but then eventually did go to sleep. However, a little bit after he had fallen asleep, that's when he is woken up to an aggressive knocking on his door, his bedroom door, and he lives alone. He said when he woke up, he was fully sweating and just felt confused. He thought maybe he had been dreaming, but still wanted to go open the door to make sure. The last thing I'm doing is opening that bedroom door. But he said that every single night he sleeps next to a shotgun that is fully loaded but with the safety on, so he grabbed that and started walking to the door. Said that he honestly wasn't being too quiet or careful when he went to open the door, and that he really didn't even look too hard. Then why even get up out of the bed if you're not even gonna really look? But okay. He writes that his house isn't that big and that it's surrounded by trees. He has neighbors, but you can't really see them between the trees. He says that when he opened the door, he could see everything in his house and that everything looked normal. He said that a light was on, but that he honestly couldn't remember if he left that light on or not. He said after a few seconds of looking and seeing nothing out of place, he just assumed he was having a nightmare and went back to bed. He woke up early that morning and quickly got ready for work, and that he was so busy all day that he didn't even check his phone. It wasn't until he got back to his house that he looked at his phone. And when he looked at his phone, he had a message from an unknown number. In fact, it was a video. Now here's where things get really freaky. As soon as he starts this video, he can immediately tell that it is coming from inside his house. And not only that, but the video shows his bedroom door being opened. He is sitting up with his shotgun in hand, and the video captures him looking around the room to figure out what that knocking sound was. But he doesn't remember that happening, let alone when he opened the door, no one was there at all. He says that he texts the number and says, "Who is this?" but he gets no response. When he got no response, he sent another message and said that if they didn't say who they were, he was going to call the police, but he still didn't get an answer. He just cannot wrap his head around how he didn't see that person because they should have been standing there clear as day. So he decides that he's going to call the police so he can show them this video to see if they can figure out anything or look at cameras around the area. So he calls the police. They said that they'll be over in a little bit, but that it was going to take some time. He said no problem, he's going to take a shower and that he would be there waiting for them. He says that he does all of his checks. He makes sure that every door is locked, all the windows are locked, the back patio is locked before he goes into the bathroom to take his shower, and he even locks the bathroom door as well. He sets his phone down on the bathroom counter and takes his shower, but as soon as he steps out of the shower, somehow his phone is gone. That's when he realizes that the bathroom door is unlocked, and not only that, his front door is unlocked as well. He says that he knows for a fact that he locked all of those doors, including the bathroom door, before he took his shower. So it is impossible for someone to have gotten in there without him realizing it. He says that he is making a complete mess of his house trying to look for his phone, but can't find it anywhere. That he almost has a heart attack when he hears 3 aggressive knocks at his front door. He says that he grabs his shotgun and looks through the peephole, but it was just Officer Kyle. He actually had been kind of friends with this officer, so he was relieved that it was him and opens the door. Honestly, at this point, I'd have been like, officer, you don't even need to worry about it because I'm not going to be living here anymore. I'm going to find another place to stay. So Officer Kyle asks him what's going on, and that's when he tells him someone has broken into my house. And Officer Kyle is like, yeah, I know, that's why I'm here. You wanted to show me a video? And the guy is like, no, like, you don't understand. Like, someone just broke into my house and stole my phone. He said immediately he could tell Officer Kyle was not really believing the story and just figured he misplaced it. So Officer Kyle is like, but you wanted to show me a video? And that's when he says, yeah, but I can't because someone just came and stole my phone. That's where the video is. So instead, he's just kind of showing him where the guy was standing and what he remembered, but honestly, it was all useless at this point. And y'all, this next part is insane. So later that night, he goes to bed. Quickly after falling asleep, he is woken up to another 3 loud knocks on his bedroom door. He says that he immediately grabbed his shotgun and opened the door as quickly as he could. And this time, he does see something. In his living room, against the wall, is his phone nailed to it. However, he doesn't see anyone there, which is impossible because he opened the door so quickly. So now he's thinking this invisible man is just taunting him. And he doesn't know if he should just shoot blind, if he should run. He has no idea what he should do. He says at this point, he just runs to the living room wall where his phone is and takes it down. Clearly, whoever this was took the SIM card out, and the nail through the phone made it pretty much useless and it wasn't going to work. He said there was nothing he could do about it and just locked all of his doors again and prayed he didn't lock himself in with whatever it was. He said it was like whoever it was wanted him to know that they could do whatever they want when they want. And that's why I would have packed a bag and got the heck out of there. But so he goes to work the next day, and when he gets back, walks in and immediately notices that there's something else pinned to his wall. But this time it's a Polaroid, and it's a Polaroid of him taking down his phone that was nailed to the wall the night before. So he calls the police again to let them know, but they honestly told him anyone could have taken that and just to not call them anymore. Super helpful. Thank you. Honestly, at this point, I'd been calling everyone. Ghostbusters, the FBI, the priest, literally anyone I could get a hold of. So that night he decided he was going to be staying up all night long. He chugged like 4 energy drinks, barricaded himself in the room, shotgun in hand, and he was determined to catch whoever was doing this to him. So as he's sitting there waiting, that is when he notices the door lock turning. So immediately he shoots 3 slugs into the door. And because clearly we can tell he's a very curious person, of course he opened the door to see if he hit anything. But of course nothing was there. But his porch door was open, but when he went out there, he didn't see anything. However, after looking a bit further, that's when he sees a little patch of blood. But it was definitely not enough blood to have killed someone. He quickly just runs back into his house, locks the back patio door, but that's when he sees another Polaroid. It was right where the other Polaroid and the phone had been, but this time the Polaroid picture was this guy outside on his back porch just a second ago with the view of someone sitting on the couch taking it. The guy writes at this point he has no idea what to do. There's no one to call. The police have already said to not call again. He knows that everyone is going to think he is absolutely insane, but he's planning on getting cameras to put up around the house and hopefully he can catch him. But I hope you guys enjoyed another episode of Creepy Corner with Ken. This one was absolutely fascinating and terrifying all at the same time. Y'all make smart choices, and if you experience anything like this, please move away.
Let's read a scary Reddit story. I am obsessed with reading people's paranormal encounters on Reddit, and I want to share some of these scariest stories I've come across. Today's story takes place in Appalachia, and it's a long one, so get ready. For obvious reasons, I don't want to give away my exact location, but I'll tell you that I live in the upstate of South Carolina, about 45 minutes away from downtown Greenville. But don't let the proximity to civilization fool you. These lands are cursed. The specific area I grew up in was a seasonal habitat for the Cherokee. They would specifically come here to hunt game and make pottery. There's good clay in the surrounding creeks. My neighbor excavated his creek and found broken pots, tools, and animal bones in piles. They did more digging and found the remnants of a settlement. It's a beautiful valley in the daytime, lots of green, especially in the summertime, but at night, something about it makes you uneasy. There's a certain heaviness to the air. It's almost too dark at night. When I was a kid growing up, I heard my mom tell stories of hearing strange things at night. Babies crying from places they shouldn't be, people calling for you in places they don't go, especially in the middle of the night. I always took it as just her trying to keep us inside after dark. And to be fair, we did have problems with coyotes, but the rapid development in the area kind of pushed out everything except deer. The deer stayed. When I was about 8 or 9, I was jumping on the trampoline with my brother and my friend. It was about 10 p.m. on a weeknight in the summer. We had jumped ourselves tired and were laying on the trampoline just looking at the stars. Suddenly, my dog starts going absolute bonkers and hollering as loud as she possibly could. We peek over the trampoline and watch as she tucks tail and runs back to her doghouse on the other side of the yard. Then the crickets stopped. I mean, they all just shut up in unison. There was no sound except for us breathing and the cars on the highway a mile and a half away. We all got a pretty uneasy feeling, and we knew when the bugs stopped talking, so should we. We all got quiet and listened. I glanced over the frame and stared across the field, about 70 yards or so, to the road. A shadow was walking on the road. At first, we thought it was a man, but he was really tall and he walked funny. His knees didn't look right. He also moved extremely fast for his cadence. One step was about 5 feet or more, covering ground fast. We all watched this thing, and I guess it felt our eyes on it and it stopped. In a second, it went from upright to all fours, and it was low to the ground, maybe 2 to 3 feet off the ground, and it just stayed there. I didn't see any face. I didn't see any defining markers of any kind, just a shadow. But I could tell whatever it was lanky. It was long and stringy looking. We all stared at this thing, and we could tell it was staring back. I whispered to my brother and friend that on the count of 3, we'd get out and run. This thing started to move closer. We would blink and it was even closer. Every time we took our eyes off of it, even for a millisecond, it got closer and closer. I counted to 3 and we all bolted off the trampoline the 30 yards to the back door. We made it inside and locked the door behind us. We immediately told my parents what we saw, and they dismissed us as being scared kids with overactive imaginations. This was our first experience with this thing, and because we had acknowledged its presence, I took it as an invitation. The following months we would be playing in the backyard like we always did, except this time we made sure Mom had all of the lights on in the backyard. Even had my dad put up an extra light on the corner of the house next to the trampoline, just to have that extra security. But sometimes we'd peer down towards the barn and we'd see a shadow peeking around the side. Those glowing green eyes were hard to miss. You'd stare at it and it would stare back, but it never came any closer. I don't know if the light saved us or if our large groups would be a deterrent. As we got older, our friend group got larger. We got into things most bored teenagers in small towns do. Smoking weed, drinking underage, swiping cigarettes from our moms. One night, we all snuck out and linked up at our friend's house. We will call him Tom for now. Tom lived with his great-grandmother about a quarter of a mile up the road from us. It was quiet, as it usually is, bugs chirping, a train off in the distance, a car speeding past on the highway. You could actually hear the cars that far away. That's how quiet this neighborhood was. We would walk or we'd ride our bikes at night. Our buddy, who I will refer to just as Joe, was poor and didn't have a bike, and he had the furthest walk out of all of us. He had about a mile to go down a really dark road with no streetlights and woods surrounding it on most sides. We all got to Tom's house around midnight or so, after all of our parents went to bed. It was me, my brother Henry, Tom, Joe, and our friend who I will call Chief. That was his nickname. He is half Cherokee and is probably the only reason we lived to tell this tale. Because after these events occurred, Chief explained to us all of the rules you have to follow in Appalachia, especially when it's dark out. I was on the porch when Joe looked at his phone, let out a big yawn, and said that he wanted to go to bed. I offered to walk my bike with him to where his road turns off and where I turn onto mine, meaning he would have a 3/4 of a mile walk by himself up the road in the dark. He said yes, and my brother Henry tagged along. We left Chief and Tom to keep hanging out as Chief lived at the bottom of Tom's hill. Me, Henry, and Joe walked towards home. I was walking my bike, as was Henry, and Joe was on foot. We chatted it up, talking about the music we were listening to. But then we heard it. There was a snap in the tree line to our right. We kept walking though. We assumed it was some critter moving about in the woods. No big deal. We kept talking as we did. I swear though, I kept hearing what I thought was an echo of what we were saying. The thing is, those woods soak up sound. They don't throw it back at you. Then Joe stopped talking and stopped walking. We all stopped dead in our tracks. He turned towards us and asked, "Did you hear something?" Then we all heard Joe's voice coming from the woods. Every hair on my body stood up. It wasn't words, but the shape of them, the wrong spacing, the breath of it was wrong. It was like one of those parrots trying to copy a sound they just heard, but it sounded just like Joe. Joe turned and looked back down the road towards Tom's house, and if I had to guess, he was contemplating just staying there for the night. But his grandma would kill him if she woke up and he wasn't home, so he went home anyway. I watched him start walking down the road as me and Henry got on our bikes and sped down the road to our house. We got in the garage, shut it behind us, and put our bikes up and went to bed. There's no way they just let Joe go home alone. after they heard Joe's voice in the woods. Little known to us, Joe had a pretty eventful walk home. He told us the following afternoon that on his walk home, he kept hearing footsteps behind him and breathing. He would turn around to see nothing there. He would stop and the footsteps would stop. He started to pick up the pace, not running, not trying to show fear. Then he heard Tom whisper to him, a whisper he felt in his ears. There was nobody and nothing around. He turned and ran the remaining distance to his house, and once he got into the floodlights of his grandma's carport, he felt better. But the steps he heard as an echo behind him were now a full-on sprint. He ran as fast as he could to the door, opened it, and got in. As he went to shut the door, the floodlights had gone off. They had turned themselves off. These things were sensitive to the slightest movement, and I swear a bug on the ground 100 yards away would set it off. But Joe had only been inside for maybe 3 seconds. Then he saw it. It was crouching down low, maybe 15 feet outside the door in the dark. The shadow of it was enough to put the fear of God in him. He saw the head turn, and it turned wrong, further than a human or any animal should be able to turn it. He shut the door and deadbolted the locks. He crawled into bed, and for the remainder of the night, he heard Tom outside, asking him to come out for a cigarette. Let me just say right now, if I didn't have a bike and my other friends had a bike, and we just heard my voice in the woods and you made me walk home in a dark road alone, we would not be friends anymore. That's crazy. I think the friends were the scariest part of this story. Anyway, also I do want to say that in some updates on Reddit, Joe is okay. Like, he made it out okay. But yeah, I think I would have to cut my friends off for that. I'm not gonna lie. Stories in Appalachia are always super scary, and you never really know what's out in the woods. What do you think Joe and his friends saw in Appalachia?
My parents had one rule growing up, and it was to never go in the basement alone. It was a normal house. There was nothing haunted that it looked... It was a normal house. There was nothing haunting looking about it, but my entire family all followed the same rule of never going into the basement alone. When I was younger, I assumed it was just because the staircase was pretty steep, but as I got older, I started to notice that whenever somebody was trying to go down to the basement, they would call for somebody else to come with them every single time. Even if it was as simple as just grabbing like a little box. Like, everybody was scared of this basement, and we didn't sit and talk about it. It was just this unforeseen rule that we all made. One afternoon when I was about 16 years old, my parents left the house to go run some errands, and I was watching TV, and I remembered that I left my baseball glove downstairs. And so I walked over to the top of the stairs, and the door was closed, and I sat there and I just kind of laughed because I felt so dumb for being so scared to go into this basement alone. I felt like I should be old enough to not believe in these stupid family superstitions, so I turned the light on and I started to walk down the stairs. The basement was unfinished. It had concrete floor, shelves. I just had like holiday decor on it, the normal unfinished basement, right? And I found my baseball glove almost immediately. I bent down to pick it up, and then I heard footsteps, and it was above me, and I was like, oh, my parents must have come home. I walked back to the stairs, and I noticed that the basement door was closed, so I went up the stairs, and I tried opening it, but it wouldn't open, and so I assumed maybe somebody like fell against the basement door or something. I don't know why it wasn't opening, and so I knocked, and I just kind of called out, Mom. And then I heard footsteps again, and they walked across the kitchen to the other side of the door. At this point, I started to get really creeped out. I heard somebody jiggle the doorknob like they were gonna open it, and it felt like forever that I was waiting in this freaking basement. Like, literally 1-2 seconds, and then it was silence. And then the door opened, and I saw that nobody was there. The house was completely emptied. I checked every single room. I looked in the garage. My parents' car was still gone. I was alone in the house until about 10 minutes later, and I saw my parents' car drive into the driveway. I told them what happened. Neither of them laughed or like thought it was a funny thing. My dad literally asked me if I went down there all by myself, and I said yeah, and then he just kind of nodded. And then even at dinner time, like, nobody even mentioned it. Fast forward a couple years, my grandmother passed away, and I found a bunch of her journals, and most of them were just like grocery lists or like little memories. And then there was one page that talked about the basement, and it clearly said, never let anybody stay in the basement after they think they've heard somebody come home. There was no explanation, so I brought it up to my dad, and I asked what he thought that it meant, and this is what he told me. This was something that I hadn't heard before. He told me that when he was 12, he had been in the basement alone before, and he heard his dad come home, and his dad was wearing his boots across the kitchen door because he yelled out, "Hello, Dad," or whatever, in that same basement. And as he heard the boots crossing the floor, He told me that when he was 12, he was alone in that same basement, and he heard his dad come home, and his dad even called out his name, and so my dad said, "Hi, like I'm down here." Then my dad started to walk up the basement stairs, and then that's when he heard the actual front door open. And just then, his dad walked in through the front door holding his lunchbox and his boots and everything. His dad had only just gotten home, and so I asked my dad, I said, "Who were you talking to?" And he says, "I don't know." That's why my mother made that rule.
All right, we got a true viewer story tonight from Rooster. I'm going to jump straight into it. This all took place in eastern Kentucky, Pike County. I'll even narrow down the location. A little community called Dorton. My nickname is Rooster. All my buddies call me Rooster. The encounter happened in 2016, the summer right after I graduated. It was me and my brother and our two best friends. We was staying up late playing video games, and we had the house to ourselves. It was roughly 2:30 or 3 a.m. We had started to get ready for bed when something on the back side of the house suddenly violently slammed into it. Really hard, like if a boulder would have hit the trailer. And we were all in a panic but staying very quiet. Then we heard a bone-chilling scream, followed by what sounded like nails on a chalkboard. Whatever it was scratching the back of the trailer, and so we snuck through the hallway and seen that whatever it was about 7 to 7.5 foot tall. Big, hulking silhouette of a very dark figure with eyes that reflected red. So we panicked and ran to lock the door. It was then when we heard there were more than just one of them moving around the trailer, terrifying me and my brother and my best friends. We could only think of one thing. We needed to call for help, so I called my uncle, and he said he would be down right away because he could hear it in our voices. We weren't joking. We were all genuinely scared from all this, so we waited by the door until we hear him pull in. It was then we hear that god-awful scream again. Then there was silence. He caught sight of it pulling in. The eyes reflected red in his headlights, and he said it looked like a big, hairy man, but just a lot larger than normal. To say the least, my uncle told us he now knew for certain that Sasquatch was real, and he said he had never been so scared in his life. He said when he pulled in the driveway, he had seen it on the embankment behind the house. So it pretty much goes without saying, we're all Bigfoot believers now. We had been hearing it for a few months, but that's the only time it actually had done something aggressive. So yeah, Pike County Bigfoot, let's not meet again. Wow, Rooster, that's a wild story. Thank you for sharing it with us. I'm glad that you guys made it out of that okay. That sounds terrifying. But that's been Jay's Haunted Appalachia for tonight. Keep sending me those stories and suggestions, guys. Keep Appalachia haunted, y'all.
I used to work at a haunted dollar store. Let me read you a scary story. I used to work at a dollar store that was 100% haunted. It was a newer one in Michigan. After closing, we would hear small, rapid footsteps throughout the aisles, like a customer's kid was still running around in the store, but nobody was ever there. We would look literally everywhere before we got used to it. The first time it happened to one of our newly key holders, she got so spooked she actually called the police, and they came and they couldn't find anything either. We would be in the cash office counting the deposit, and we would literally watch the freezer doors occasionally open and slowly close by themselves over the security cameras. Once when I was in the front talking to a girl about applying, we heard a steady scraping noise coming from the baby aisle to our left, and we turned to watch a nearly 2-foot-long box of diapers very slowly slide off the bottom shelf. Nobody was in the aisle, and it got to the point where only like an inch of the long box was left on the shelf, and it just kind of stayed impossibly suspended there for like a full 3 seconds before the other end finally fell to the floor. The girl I was talking to was just like, never mind, and left. That place was crazy. I didn't even last a year before transferring, specifically because of all the weird things that constantly happen at that store. It got to the point where I was saying stuff like, "You are not welcome to follow me. I am leaving alone, before leaving every night and then burning Palo Santo and rosemary when I got home. And that's the end of the story. So have y'all guys ever had any scary or haunting work related experiences? They're fun to read and learn about, but to experience, I'm sure it's really scary, especially it's your workplace, so you're making money, your livelihood depends on your work. So having to work somewhere where there's paranormal activity or strange things happening, I'm sure is very, very, very stressful. So if you ever experience anything like that, let me know, drop it in the comments, let's talk about it. My work history is very short. I went to school for a very long time. I only worked retail and then the current job that I have now. And when I worked retail, it was a department store, and our overnight shifts would tell us that at night when they would do overnight stocking or putting new clothes out and stuff whenever we'd get it, that they would sometimes hear running on the other side of the store. There's only like a small team of maybe less than 10 people. It was kind of like a small group, the overnight shift. And they would say that sometimes they would hear, in the men's department, they would hear people walking, or they would hear voices, and they would specifically say the men's section. And so the person that, I forgot the titles, but the men's team lead, I guess, she refused to be in the men's section alone. So if she had to restock or put out the new clothes in the men's section, she had to have somebody. She refused. She would never be there by herself. And I think even the shoe section, I think someone said that there were some weird things in the shoe section, which is close to the home section, which I think that would be probably the creepiest part of the department store, because they sell they sell luggages. So I could just imagine hearing the luggages rolling around. That'd be creepy. I'd leave. Straight up, I just leave. No, I'm not doing that. I never experienced anything, but I did hear my coworkers say that they did experience things there, and especially overnight. So, but anyways, if you have any stories that you like to share in the comments, please leave them below so I can read them. I would love to read your experiences. If you would like to send me any stories so I could read on here, you can send it to my email in my bio. But yeah, let me know.
Bro, what's going on around